Hello, welcome to the Flute 360 podcast, where we incorporate a panoramic view of flute-related topics. I am your host, Heidi K. Begay, and this is episode 147, an interview with Erica Peel. Before we dive into Erica Peel's interview, I have some exciting offers to share with you. Never could I imagine that Flute 360 would get to work with such fantastic companies, but here we are. I am thrilled to announce 3 exciting discounts from my flute friends. Please take advantage of Carolyn Nussbaum's 10% discount off of cleaning supplies from now until February 14th. Also, Flute Specialists is giving you a 20% discount off of sheet music from now until March 1st. Finally, Flutistry Boston is giving you a 20% discount off of the wonderful book Survival of the Flutist by Marian Gadigian and Patty Adams. Use your Flute 360 code today to set up your flute studio with the essentials. With your purchase, you are financially supporting the Flute 360 podcast. Thank you for your backup, and all the links are provided below in the show notes. And now, let's turn our attention to Erica's interview. We hope you enjoy the conversation. Is that better?
Yes. That volume button. It's a stinker.
Yeah, it is.
I haven't used Skype in like years, so this is a trip.
It's very 90s.
Yeah, totally. It's all Zoom these days, so I'm having fun relearning Skype.
Nice.
Can you hear me okay? Is it clear?
Yeah, no, you sound wonderful.
Okay, good.
You would think that I would have my, end figured out since I've been doing this for 3 years.
It was pure luck that I figured it out.
Okay. So. Oh, shoot. Well, it's so good to hear your voice, and thank you for hopping on a call with me.
Of course. It's great to hear your voice and connect, too.
Yeah. We met a long time ago, and I do not expect you to remember at all, because it was, I think, the 2016 NFA San Diego convention.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and you and Beatrice had given a series on auditions.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was there, and I went up and started talking with you and Beatrice a little bit, but then you have so many fans. Literally, like, you were just swamped. So,
well, I think it wasn't fans as much as people who are like, desperate to learn how to win an audition, because it's such an elusive thing, so.
Yeah. Oh, shoot. But no, that was a great talk. I really enjoyed the material.
Thank you. Yeah, that was really fun to put together, and also really helpful for us as presenters to kind of nutshell our experiences, and really organize our methods and to compare. Beatrice and I had different ideas of how we went about it, and finding the similarities and differences, and it was really enlightening for us too.
I love that insight. Yeah, when I'm putting things together as a teacher, it's really invigorating for me and inspiring for me to figure out what is working, what is my strategy in order to pinpoint it and then to pass it along to my students.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's a great nutshell of how to approach auditions.
Yeah.
Or playing in general, of just practicing, really being thoughtful about what's working and what's not, and then addressing those things. So, yeah.
I love it. Actually, Beatrice and I are working right now on the Tampere Flute Festival in Finland.
Wonderful. That's so cool.
Yeah.
She's just, I feel like she's taking the world by storm, and she's so, multi-talented, and she's just like a true musician, not a flutist, which I think is what makes her so successful.
Yeah.
I love her.
Yeah, she's a great friend. Cool. Yay. So for those who may not know you, I can't imagine anyone who doesn't, but would you like to share a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. It's funny whenever I'm asked this question, like, tell us about yourself.
Yeah.
It's obviously asked in a musical context, but I want to say things like, I'm Erica Peel and I enjoy dark roast coffee and running and yoga and good bourbon and, smutty reality TV.
No, let's keep
But of course,
talking.
that's not what we're here.
Oh, no. Girl, you literally can talk about your roasted coffee as much as you want.
Well, I'm sure most of your listeners are, flutists or musicians. So I'm currently the piccoloist of the Philadelphia Orchestra, which still sounds so bizarre to hear and say, because I never could have imagined being, fortunate enough to hold a position in such a legendary orchestra. And I find myself often feeling like I'm 16 again, probably in the age of many of your listeners. And, I was an okay young flutist, but certainly nothing like today's young flutists. Not exceptional by any means. I think I auditioned at something like 8 or 9 colleges, universities, conservatories, and I was accepted to one. So I had dreams, of course, but, they were the kind of dreams that you don't ever expect to come to fruition. The ones that seem to actualize for, the insanely talented prodigies of the world, and not for us musicians who ride the struggle bus, for most of their education and claw their way up the orchestra ladder and, learn things the hard way and really pay their dues. So, I went to a university that wasn't a prestigious classical music school at the time. And I didn't attend any of the big festivals, Aspen, Tanglewood, NRO, all of those. I didn't win any big competitions, but I also didn't give up. And I worked hard, obviously, or as I prefer to say, I worked smart eventually. And, I studied, I listened, and I just dedicated myself to growth. And I'm still in that place, and I kept my nose to the grindstone for so long, and I still do, that when I lift my head up every once in a while, it's still a bit of a shock to see where I'm at and how far I've come, that I'm really living the dream for sure. I digress a bit in saying all of this, but, I think that what I didn't do or what my musical background wasn't is in many ways more important to hear than what it was. That the schools you go to, the festivals you attend, your musical upbringing, competitions, yes, those all present wonderful opportunities that students should absolutely take if given the chance. But if those opportunities don't present themselves, or, in my case, you aren't quite ready for them, that doesn't equate to any sort of meaning about your potential. And so I think that's important to say when talking about my musical background. With that said, I'm happy to talk about sort of my path to getting to where I am today. I grew up in North Jersey, and I was in a family where studying music in some form was an expectation. Not that, that would ultimately be your job, but it was an important part of life. My dad was a professional French horn player and an educator. And so I grew up with music being important in our family. I went to the University of Miami in Florida as a flute performance major. And as graduation was nearing, I was feeling pretty strongly that continuing formal degree studies was not something that was appealing to me. So luckily, and a bit serendipitously, I met Jill Felber at a flute event, and we talked about her interim program, which was a 1-year program studying with her. And it was driven by a very specific goal that we would work towards for the year. And of course, my goal was to win an orchestra job. And it was a lofty one for me at the time. But this program was exactly what I was looking for. It was a chance to study intensely, be super focused on a goal with a clear, desired outcome and a deadline for it. And so she invited me, and I accepted. I moved to Santa Barbara, and I got a job working as a dental assistant, which is a whole other story. But I worked from 9 to 5, Monday to Thursday. I played with the debut orchestra in LA, which is like a training orchestra. And anytime I wasn't working, I practiced. And then at the end of the year, I took 3 or 4, maybe 5 auditions. And from that time, I won a position with the Honolulu Symphony in Hawaii, which was just very cool, like direct cause and effect. It was like set the goal, work your butt off, spend the year just focused on that, attain goal. That it just, I was very lucky that it worked out. So when I was in Hawaii, I met my now husband, who was playing oboe and English horn out there at the time. And I played there for 3 years. And then he won a position with the Omaha Symphony in Nebraska. So we moved to the middle of the country. And that was a really interesting time for me, because while we were there, I poured my soul into composing and performing with a duo I was a part of called In Stereo. And we released 2 albums. We performed all over the country and had a ton of fun. It was a really amazing creative outlet, and atypical in the classical world. We played like pop fusion music. It wasn't classical music. So it was really great fun. And then while in Omaha, I also held positions with the Des Moines Symphony in Iowa, the Lincoln Symphony in Lincoln, Nebraska, and then eventually the piccolo position with the Omaha Symphony, which was who my husband was playing with. So I was really living like the freelance life that so many of us know, to make ends meet with a number of different positions and jobs, all the while auditioning for bigger orchestra jobs, but not really getting anywhere. I've taken over 50 auditions in my career, most of them unsuccessfully. But in this time when I did advance, it was always in piccolo auditions. So I sort of started to read between the lines and acknowledge and kind of accept where I was standing out. And it was kind of in the thick of all of that we had our daughter Avery. And I mention that because it sort of marks like a pivotal moment for me, but maybe in the opposite way that one would expect. I had a baby and I didn't like slow down at that point, or consider, well, I haven't won a bigger job and now I have a baby, so maybe I should stop trying, or, am I past my prime? Like that kind of, those thoughts never really occurred to me. And instead I felt like it opened a space for me to get more focused I had less time on my hands to practice. So when I did have that time, it was like the luxury of just playing through something, or, being distracted while practicing, or like, oops, that was a wasteful practice session. Like those things weren't an option. Because I had such little amount of time to work. So it was probably during this time when Avery was just a baby, when I had the least amount of time available to me, that I improved the most in my career. And it was shortly after Avery was born that I had a close call with the St. Louis Symphony. I was in the super finals for the piccolo position there. And, it was the first time that I thought, holy crap, maybe I can actually do this.
Nice.
And by this, I mean like hold a top tier orchestra position. And I think that tiny opening, that light and encouragement that I was on the right track, carried me to win a piccolo position with the San Diego Symphony, where I played for 2 glorious years, and now with the Philadelphia Orchestra. So that's kind of, my path in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. There are so many different gold nuggets there, and I wish I could reflect on all of them. But seriously, like goosebumps up and down my arms. Because one of the main reasons why I was just dying to pick your brain in our interview today is because you had mentioned this at the San Diego convention, how you had auditioned at 40 plus orchestras and then got your dream job. And I just remember the room, I don't know, like having this sigh of relief, like, oh, she's, she pursued, like we are. And there was a normalcy to it, and people could relate to your story. And so I just love how you're showing, young and old flutists, like what you said, you committed to growth and you kept going and you kept pursuing. And I just love that. So thank you for being so open about, your story.
Oh, of course. I don't think there's any other way to be. And, part of our responsibility is teaching, the young flutists and educating, and to do that well, I think requires some authenticity with what you've been through and to share that. So, but it's true. I mean, I think that more often than not, people struggle in auditions, and, sure, people win auditions right out of school, but that's rare. I think there are obviously many more people who are on the audition circuit, or will be when we get past this mess that we're in, but who are on that, in the audition circuit and really not advancing a lot and struggling with whether or not to continue. And, everybody's on their own path, and whether or not they choose to continue is a very personal choice, but there's nothing but growth in preparing for auditions. And if you have the right mindset when you take them, it's just an opportunity to continue learning about yourself. So.
Yeah, no, I love that.
Hello, this is Jim Keefe, and I make Keefe Piccolos along with my good friend and business partner, Jan Kinmonth. Over the years, Jan and I have been fortunate to work with many great piccolo players and have developed a very good understanding of the challenges piccolo players face. One of the great insights we learned was from Lori Sokoloff, former principal piccolo of the Baltimore Symphony. Lori told us, the challenge in playing the piccolo is not getting out the high notes. The challenge is in making it sound like a musical instrument. So our job as makers is to offer piccolos that help players make this beautiful but challenging little instrument sound like it belongs in the orchestra. Our job is to offer piccolos that have a rich and dark tone quality, that blend beautifully and have a stable, predictable scale. To achieve this, every aspect of our work on the piccolo comes into play, from our selection and treatment of wood, to the design of our scale and head joints, and even to the selection of our pads. No detail is overlooked. We also offer many options to make life a bit easier, such as the C-sharp trill, the vented C key, the Brasa F-sharp, as well as 4 head joint styles with a range of material combinations. By the way, our head joints are generally available immediately and are a great way to breathe new life into an older piccolo. To learn more about Keefe Piccolos, check our website, send a message, or give us a call.
And you are so right about the time factor. Same story for me in 2014 when I was prepping for DMA auditions. I had no time. I mean, I was teaching like 50 students. I was driving around with, like a chicken with its head cut off. And when I got to pick up my flute, I had to be super intentional. I was like, I have 30 minutes. So
that's right.
How can
what am I going to produce?
How can I be the most effective? And so, again, I'm so glad that you highlighted that, because a lot of times, I see my students, they're like, I don't have the time. I don't have the time. I'm like, well, you have to make the time. And even if it is 15 minutes, carve it out and be super intentional. And so I'm just so glad that you highlighted that aspect.
Oh, I'm such a believer in the quality of the practice and not the quantity. When I was at UM, it was almost like a competition for who practiced. Well, I spent 5 hours in the practice. Well, I spent 7 hours, and I always it always rubbed me the wrong way, and not until, maturing and figuring out why did I come to this. But I think you can spend 2 hours sitting in the practice room and get very little done. And do just as much in 15 minutes if you're effectively practicing. And that's we could do a whole other hour just talking about how to do that. But I think it's important. I actually make my students practice less time, don't allow them to practice hours and hours, and instead, keep them to just 20-minute sessions and super goal oriented and thoughtful. And it's amazing how much more growth happens when they're restricted in that way.
For sure. Awesome. So you've highlighted a little bit that, these past few years have been this lovely, magical whirlwind. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Because, jumping off of this, Philadelphia Orchestra position that you are also a faculty member at Peabody. So congratulations. And can you just share with us what this season has been like for you?
Yeah, a whirlwind is right. I mean, I still feel like I'm going to wake up tomorrow and it will have all been, the most amazing dream. But, back to regularly scheduled programming of my life. But when I had my first trial week playing with the orchestra here, I remember we were doing Shostakovich 4, which is a beast of a piccolo part. And during the performances, I teared up literally every single performance, and had to pull myself together, just thinking, I was on trial, so I didn't have the job. And I thought this may be the only time that you get to perform with this incredible orchestra. So just bathe in, the sound and in gratitude for what, a mind-blowing opportunity and moment this is. And that was how that first week was for me. It was just like very emotional and filled with so much gratitude. And it's not an exaggeration when I say that I still regularly have those moments of deep appreciation for this job. Job isn't quite sufficient enough of a word, but that's what it is. And so I can't believe that it's been, 3 years already, because I still feel like such a newbie in like my awe of the orchestra and of where I am. And as far as Peabody is concerned, I remember getting the call from the Marina Piccinini, to come do a piccolo masterclass, and then getting a message from the Lori Sokoloff saying that, she entrusts this very special program to me. And I just couldn't believe that it was happening. And I still can't, there was no chance when I was 17 of even thinking about getting into the school where I now teach.
Wow.
So it's kind of crazy, but I believe in the program and the need for the program at Peabody. And I just adore my students, and we learn so much together. So there has been a lot of movement, and I guess you could say, it's moved very fast over the last few years. I think I'm still processing all of it, just kind of like still in awe of it all. And which, in many ways, I hope that it always is like that. Always just pinching myself in gratitude for where I am and what I have.
No, that's wonderful. And I can't speak for everyone, but just listening to you right now, I can hear that gratitude in your voice. So it shows tremendously. And it lights up my face because you can hear it.
Yeah, I still get a little choked up when I talk about it, because it's really, it's just crazy. It's a bit mind blowing when I really am forced to think about it.
Yeah.
So thank you for making me think about it.
Oh, anytime. That's my job. But yeah, I asked that question about, these last few years being a whirlwind, and how are you taking it in? Because for me, kind of tapping into, people's stories and wanting to know more about y'all and stuff, the thing that I kind of picked up was like, I bet she's still like, whoa, is this happening? I don't know.
Yeah.
That was just
1,000%.
Okay. That was just the energy I picked up. And I don't know, I never want to assume, because assumption can be dangerous, but I just wanted to see if I was kind of near that target. And I'm so glad that you still feel like it's this magical experience. And so,
I totally do. And it's just every opportunity that comes now is like, things that that many people would be like, oh yeah, I'm going, this just comes to mind. Oh, I'm going to teach down at New World. Like, yeah, that's what I'm doing this weekend. And when I was asked to do that, it was like, I needed to get a bottle of champagne out and like celebrate it, because I couldn't get into New World, and now they're asking me to come and coach their fellows. It's just like every little thing like that happens. It's really, really meaningful. And I feel like it also gives, hope to the people who are, in their 20s and still struggling like I was, and, that things can change very fast, and if you want them to. So.
No, that's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about your colleagues. What is it like to work with the flute section through the orchestra?
Yeah. Oh, it's great fun. I've been really lucky to have some incredible sections in the orchestras I've played in, and we can talk about the Philadelphia section, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my other sections before getting here, because that's so important in my journey. the Omaha Symphony is kind of like where I started to grow some wings, I think, some piccolo wings, and I felt very safe there. My principal was Maria Harding, and the second flutist at the time was Leslie Fagan, who now plays in Nashville. And they, became my closest friends, and they were encouraging and loving and supportive, all the things that make such a great section. And all of that allowed me a space to become more comfortable in the piccolo position, with hearing myself all of the time, which I still struggle with. And, the atmosphere that they set allowed me to take risks and kind of learn my limits and my parameters. And they really helped me build confidence. And then my section at San Diego was another section of beautiful women, Rose Lombardo and Sarah Tuck, who also became my very closest friends. And they created that same loving and supportive space that I very much needed stepping into a bigger job. And interestingly, when I came to Philadelphia, at that time, it was in a section made up entirely of men, older men. So that was different. And I will admit, a bit intimidating. But for my first rehearsal of my trial week here, the associate principal flutist, David Kramer, greeted me with the warmest smile. And anyone who knows him knows that he has the most genuine and lovely heart. It's like he's surrounded by warmth, and you can't help but feel comforted by him. He has one of those auras. And he was my introduction to the section. And so my guard came down pretty fast, realizing that it wasn't going to be how I imagined it. And both Jeff Kaner, of course, and then Lauren Lind, who was the second flutist at the time, were equally welcoming and gracious. Since then, both David and Lauren have retired. So aside from Jeff, we are like a brand spanking new section. And that's actually very cool. It was also neat being a part of hiring Pat Williams, our new associate principal, and then Olivia Staten, our new second flutist. And I think we all work so well together. I mean, that's our job, of course, but it's really amazing how easy it is to communicate within our section and then within the whole orchestra. And I find each of them to be really inspirational in very different ways. And actually that applies to the entire orchestra. I mean, the insane accuracy with which the orchestra plays is one thing, but then there's a freedom in the solo playing and even in the strings as a whole, really, that I'm just in awe of. The same phrase can be spun differently night to night, and it is. And that also comes from the podium, Yannick allowing us and encouraging us to play with freedom and to be inspired in the moment. It's really exhilarating and requires a lot of trust in each other in our section. And we have that. So I'm very lucky.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah. No, I love all of that. And thank you so much for including the past flute sections too. What a wonderful...
Well, they say it takes a village, and I really, without those experiences, I just wouldn't be here. There's no way. And they were really instrumental in my growth as an orchestral player. So.
No, that's amazing. Cool. So do we want to talk about Peabody and what teaching there is like and these past 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, well, it's mostly been online, which everyone knows so well. I started in the 2019-20 school year. So I've really only had 1.5 semesters in person. And then the rest has been, COVID teaching. But that said, it's been very rewarding. I get to work with Marina's students, some of the brightest young flutists out there, and they're all seriously interested in honing their piccolo playing, which I feel very fortunate that they have that attitude. And then I have 2 to 3 piccolo majors who I am completely invested in and who I just adore working with and developing, lifelong friendships and relationships with. And so I have the privilege of sort of guiding their growth And I think it's a massive responsibility, and I take it very seriously, creating that safe environment where they can and should explore their limits, and then, question their assumptions, all of that, which is a part of learning, and then going through that with them, as that's what I'm doing all of the time too, questioning my assumptions and exploring my limits all of the time. So it's really thrilling to go on that journey with them, and to serve as sort of a sounding board in more ways than one for them. It's only the majors it's a master's program or GPD. So these are all students who have gone through their undergrad. So they're really adults at this point.
Yeah.
And so I love that connection that I create with them. It's special.
Yeah. No, and I love how you said that, especially because of their age, you almost feel in a way like, yes, you are their teacher, but these friend-like relationships are being formed at the same time. And I feel the same way with my older students, and there is nothing quite like that. Yes, you get to guide them as a mentor, but at the same time, you get to laugh at really dumb things.
Absolutely. Yeah. You really end up developing real friendships and relationships that go beyond, their graduation. It's not about those couple of years that they're, under my tutelage. It's really a lifelong relationship. So.
Yeah, exactly. Because you will be, writing reference letters for them, for years to come. They'll text you when they get their first job, and you're just a part of their life.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope it stays that way.
Well, no, I think it will, because through the grapevine, I hear that you are the most encouraging, inspiring teacher ever. So, no, your students really love you and adore you. And since you are such an inspiration, especially during a time like this, 2020, 2021, can you offer any inspiration for students and teachers alike who perhaps are looking for that during these times?
Yeah, that's a question that I hear a lot over the last 9 months, during the pandemic. How does one stay inspired and motivated, and words of encouragement, know? And I think the connotation of that question, there's like an implication there that we should be, taking advantage of this time and making the most of it and working our butts off, continuing the grind, despite the fact that the world has like drastically changed.
Yeah.
Our lives have changed in drastic ways. And, I've considered during this time that maybe it's not the moment to be looking outward for inspiration and motivation. And maybe it's more the time to look inward for that and figure out for ourselves, like what that looks like as individuals. I mean, I can certainly come up with plenty of like external sources. We have an arsenal of YouTube videos at our fingertips with some of the most inspirational music making that exists, right? So like definitely use that as a resource. Or we can get out into nature and find inspiration and breathing the fresh air these days, or, there are so many places to turn to, but I think more important than that during this time is showing ourselves grace when we aren't motivated or inspired, and being patient with ourselves when we are in a slump. We spend so much time thinking that how we feel isn't right. I'm in a slump. I need to change that. I need to fix that. I need to get my butt off the couch and do something. But I don't know. It's just an idea. But I think if we listen to our bodies, and say, yeah, I'm not motivated right now.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Or, there are big things happening in the world, in our world, individually and collectively. And it's overwhelming. And I will allow myself to take the time to feel that. And for me, it's interesting when I do that, when I allow myself to like sit on the couch for a day and just be, from the outside, that may look like I'm being lazy or I'm unmotivated, both of which may be true, but it's interesting. I then find myself turning around, the next day and feeling incredibly productive and inspired, when I get into like a zone of work, whatever that work looks like, because I've been patient with myself And I trust that the desire to produce and work will come when it feels right. So, I guess that's my message about this time and about being motivated and inspired. It's like maybe the search shouldn't be so much what's out there that I can latch onto to like pull me out, and it more like, let's just allow ourselves to live in these, more difficult sensations that we're feeling, and be patient with ourselves. And I think, if we've chosen music as a career, we're clearly motivated
Yeah.
in some way. Like it will come, it will get there. But I think it's just more important for us to show ourselves grace right now in this bizarre time.
Yeah. We're not robots.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we think, and this applies to auditions too, we think that that's a requirement for what we do, is to be robotic and, play exactly the same every single time and make no mistakes. And it's just not realistic.
True.
And it's not authentic. It's not who we are. So
Yeah, very true. No, I love that. So I guess then this question is kind of redundant in a way, but not really. What are your internal and or external motivators?
well, yeah, especially during this time, I find, motivation and inspiration in like little places. Well, actually, I suppose they're huge places, but what I mean is everyday places, I guess. My students have been integral, though they probably don't know it, in lifting me up and in giving me purpose. I have a real responsibility that I'm honored to have towards them, to be a rock in their education and in their lives. And having that responsibility really lights a fire in me to continue being my best self so I could be there for them. So the teaching aspect of this pandemic has really kept me going in unexpected ways. And then I've also found it important to stay connected to colleagues musically. And I mean, that's what we do as musicians, we connect. And so, whether that means, and it usually does, a virtual recording with them, or, I did with my husband, an outdoor distance recital, or, just sending practice recordings back and forth with a pianist. It's important for me to find ways to continue connecting in some form or another. And that keeps me motivated, that connection, that purpose.
No, I love that. Yeah, and if opportunity kind of, shifts or changes or is non-existent, because of times like pandemic, finding those opportunities and actually making a statement by saying, I'm going to search for that for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody connects in different ways. So, your version of finding that connection might be different, but yeah, I think it's important that we do connect somehow.
Yeah, no, definitely. When I was talking with my prior teacher, or one of my prior teachers, Lisa Garner Santa at Tech, she made a very interesting point a couple weeks ago and said, I miss the niceties going up and down the hall of the School of Music building. You don't get to do the little nods or say, hey, how's it going? And she's like, I miss that. And it's so true. It's like, those simple things that have been, for now, kind of removed from our culture. Yeah. It kind of adds up with someone's.
Yeah. And there are things that, I mean, we can go into silver linings here. Those are things that we never would have deemed important.
Right.
Or, connective, really, in any way. Like, how is that connective? A nod to a colleague, and now coming out on the other side of this pandemic, I think we're all going to appreciate those tiny things so much more.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then, with that, she's like, I'm making it a point to ask, my friends and my, former students or current students, like, if you think of me, just send a text and let's pretend that's us passing each other in the hall. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I love that.
Yeah. And so I don't know, wanted to share that because even if it's not, like a huge, creating a massive opportunity for music and sending a recording and that, like exactly what you said, even if it's something small, and even though it seems small, it's really big in and impactful to somebody's world too.
Yeah.
Even those small things, actually asking and saying, this is what I need. I need the text message, quote unquote, being passed the hellos in the hallway. Create that for yourself if that's what you're needing.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I love Lisa. Of course, she would have some wonderfully insightful thing like that.
Wouldn't she?
She's fantastic. Yep.
Every time she opens up her mouth, I'm just like, okay, well.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I have to go read like 10 zillion more books or something.
I know. Oh my gosh. Yes. I have a list sitting on my end table.
Oh, shoot. Speaking of tech, your husband is a graduate of Texas Tech, correct?
He is. Yes.
Yeah.
He
So
sure
cool.
is.
When did he graduate?
Yeah. I'm not going to give that away.
Oh, okay.
He'd be mad.
Okay.
He'd be upset.
That is
his dad actually was director of bands there too, many moons ago.
Oh,
So,
I did not know that.
Yeah, we have, a lot of family and friends down there.
Oh, very neat. Very cool. Huh. So you mentioned earlier in email messages that you were doing a recording with the orchestra. What rep were you guys playing?
So, yeah, it's kind of big news because, we're not performing right now for an audience, obviously, but we are recording and compiling concerts that people can watch digitally and buy tickets for. And the tickets are, I sound like an ad right now, but it's kind of incredible. They're just $17, which I think is like an amazing deal to see the Philadelphia Orchestra. And it's called the Digital Stage. And it's, the orchestra's answer to the pandemic. It allows us to continue to work. And it allows us to continue to connect, what I was talking about earlier, to our audience locally, but also broaden that connection to audiences much further away. So anyway, I got a call the day before Thanksgiving, letting me know that Yannick wanted to feature me in a concerto for the digital stage. And I mean, it's just like, yet another completely insane thing to hear that I had to breathe and pull myself together just to imagine. But luckily I didn't have that much time to think about it because the recording would take place in a little over 6 weeks from then. So we had to quickly decide what I would play. And of course, the Vivaldi Piccolo Concerto was thrown out as something that was easy to put together. Everyone knows, we'd only have one service to rehearse and record.
Wow.
So, it's not like I can rehearse days before. It's like I come dressed and we rehearse and record it just all then.
Wow.
So, that would have been a safe choice, the Vivaldi for sure. But after I got off the call, I kind of sat with the thought of what would be in many ways the biggest performance of my life, and I thought of the orchestra's mission of promoting, advancing new works. I thought of Yannick's propensity for risk taking and, I envisioned performing something that really felt like my voice, and I adore the Vivaldi for what it is, but the second movement I can make feel like my voice. But of course, I've made no secrets about my love of Amanda Harburg's music. And so I called her maybe 10 minutes after I got off the phone. And, I mentioned before about how I've stayed motivated and connected with musicians during the pandemic. And Amanda was a huge part of that. We've stayed very connected throughout COVID. We learned new to us piccolo repertoire, sending recordings back and forth. To learn it, we talked about our big post-COVID dreams, and we really motivated each other to stay hopeful for what came next. But I don't think either of us could have predicted what did come next. So, short backstory: I was supposed to premiere the orchestrated concerto version of Amanda's Piccolo Sonata for the gala concert of the 2020 NFA convention in Dallas, which of course was canceled. And it was canceled pretty early on. So Amanda had orchestrated the first movement, but no more than that. And so when I called her about this opportunity, it was, well, how soon could you get the other two movements done? Is this even possible? Do we really want to rush it? Maybe it's just best to wait. They might not even agree to do it. Like all kinds of questions that we had about it. So, she was like, I think I can do it. And so I said, well, I'll just ask. And ultimately, Yannick was totally on board to premiere this concerto, and she was up for the challenge. So she scrapped, interestingly, she scrapped what she had for the first movement, and she completely reorchestrated it for just strings, harp, and percussion. And she orchestrated the second and third movements. And she did all of this in under 3 weeks, which is like totally insane. She's Wonder Woman, you know? But by some miracle, it all came together, and it was, gosh, it was just such a meaningful day. You know, I probably cried 10 times at least that day, just taking in the moment and feeling, again, I'm like a broken record here, but just so much gratitude for that opportunity, and also for my relationship with Amanda, and for that piece, you know, that feels like a language that I speak, you know, and needs to be spoken. Like I just connect so powerfully to that piece. So to have this opportunity to play with this orchestra, to solo with this orchestra, which is nuts, but then to do it with a piece that I feel so strongly about, and then to share that opportunity, that experience with Amanda, it was just a day. It's like, you know, your wedding day. It goes by so fast, but like you just want to remember every moment.
Yeah.
So we don't know just yet when the concerto will air on the digital stage, but you know, I'll definitely advertise it in all of my social media platforms. And you know, for like, I just think it's insane for $17, you know, not to hear me, but to hear one of the very best orchestras in the world. You can't pass that. Everybody should go to philorg.org and you know, buy a ticket to one of them, because it's also really neat. You know, when you're in the audience there, you can't replace that like energy of a live concert for sure. But you know, the camera crew is really fantastic. And so we end up, you know, you get close-ups on these musicians playing, you know, major solos from the rep. And so it's a different experience, but equally cool, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I was going through the website of the Philadelphia Orchestra, and I was perusing through and just seeing what was going on, you know, with the ensemble and everything. And that digital stage did catch my eye. I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? This is amazing.
Yeah.
And so you're not wrong. $17 is a steal.
That's like, you know, lunch.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty great.
I chuckle just with your comparison of comparing it to the cost of a lunch, because I do that with everything in my world. If you know, I'll get
it's a good way to justify and rationalize things for sure. Yeah.
I'll get a stupid like toll bill in the mail. Like I went on the express lane and it'll be $25. And I'm like, that's 2 Chipotle burrito bowls. What?
Yeah, it's amazing what we'll spend money on, and then what we gripe about spending money on, you know.
Right? Yeah.
It's funny.
Oh, shoot. So not to be too piccolo cheesy, but I have to know, what is one of your favorite piccolo pieces outside of Amanda's compositions?
That's it. That's super easy. It's her piccolo concerto. It's just like, I don't know. It just rises above all else.
Yeah.
You know, and if I could only play one piece for the rest of my life, it would be that one. And I would do it very happily.
Nice.
Because I learn new things every time I get to it. I have a difficult time loving piccolo rep. This is sort of like, you know, blasphemous, I suppose, but because I feel like so much of it just plays into the cliche of the instrument.
Okay.
It's like chirpy and bird-like. and I don't know, that just makes me, you know, like roll my eyes. And I feel like it misses, you know, the depth of the instrument, and it treats it like it's not worthy of turning a beautiful phrase, you know, or really touching the soul in some way. And I just feel like there's too much piccolo rep that doesn't do that for me. And that's a very personal thing, you know, of course. And that's why I connect so much with Amanda's, because she doesn't, I mean, her piccolo music kind of lives in the lower and middle register, which I adore on the piccolo. And they're like these really stunning melodies that you can sink your teeth into, and you can play a million different ways. And, you know, that's the kind of like, I love just playing the melodies in the tone development through interpretation book on piccolo. Because it's like that, like those opera melodies, those gut wrenching, like, why don't we get more of that?
Yeah. Yeah.
There isn't enough of that. Like, we deserve it too.
Yeah.
And so I struggle with really, having a favorite or really loving piccolo rep when I'm playing whatever it is. I believe that I love it, of course. One of the pieces that we sort of dug into over COVID times was Doherty's The High and the Mighty, and that one is really fun. And so we had a blast, and really tricky to put together with piano. So it was fun sending each other recordings back and forth of certain sections where it's just like, you can't find the downbeats. And, we kept kind of sending them back and forth and working through those sections. And that was a really fun piece to learn. But yeah, I mean, Amanda's piccolo sonata / concerto is just, I think, has it all. Like the second movement is so thoughtful and simple, but really beautiful. And again, you can do anything with it, really, to speak your voice into it. It leaves that opportunity to really individualize the melodies. And the third movement is just, rhythmic and fun, and it rocks out, and then the first movement is like a little bit of both of those things. So it's very satisfying to play.
Awesome. I cannot wait to hear your performance with the orchestra.
Me too.
Yeah, well, let me know when, the website gets updated with that performance, and I will make sure to put it in your show notes.
For sure. Yeah.
Cool. So in the last segment of the show, I do a fun little segment called Picks, and it can be anything under the sun. It can be your favorite cereal, your favorite drink, your favorite activity that you do with your daughter. What's your pick for today?
Oh my gosh. Can I have a couple picks?
Oh, go for it.
So I mentioned that I liked smutty reality TV, right?
Yeah.
So I have to do my pick to win this season of The Bachelor.
Okay.
And my pick is Rachel.
Okay.
For anybody who watches. And then my new during COVID favorite book is, and I just think it's a must read for everyone, is Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really powerful book, and beautifully written, and really eye-opening, I think. And then my last pick will be my bourbon pick, which is Breckenridge.
Nice.
Yeah.
Three great picks. You got a little bit of everything there.
Yeah, but no music, because we talked about that enough.
That's fair. Oh, shoot. Well, speaking of music, I will throw in your beautifully compiled and edited Practice with the Experts Piccolo warm-up packet. Thank you so much for putting that together and offering that at the beginning of the pandemic. I want to direct people's attention specifically to your preface. I loved your writing, and I loved how heartfelt it was. And so that's one of my picks for today.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, sure. And my second pick is Netflix's series they put together on the universe. It's an amazing series, and oh shoot, there are so many different episodes, and I am like knee deep in it, and I cannot get away from the science and the data and the images. And my husband thinks I am like,
what is it called again?
The Universe.
The Universe. I haven't heard of it. Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, I'll have to put in the show note links. But man, these scientists totally geek out over all of these little protons here and this atom there. And I'm like, oh, that's cool guys. But then because they're so excited about it, I get really into it. And so it's really neat to see these nebulas and nebulae, and oh my gosh, it's amazing. So
oh, wow. Yeah. It's so funny. It's like it probably resonates pretty hard with musicians because we're so detail oriented, but in very different ways, You can get pretty neurotic about things that way.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why I geek out about it too, just because their attention to detail, but in their own world, Yeah. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I do with pitch and
right.
and, with intonation and vibrato and so
exactly.
That's
funny.
Cool. Oh my gosh, Erica, thank you so much for carving out time for us, and I loved connecting with you and hearing your story.
Oh, thank you, Heidi. It's so fun to do this, and this is another way for me to stay inspired and motivated is talking and chatting and connecting. So I appreciate you asking me to do it.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Johnson at Flute Specialists. Flute Specialists is excited to sponsor Dr. Begay and Flute 360 podcast Piccolo series. We sure do love piccoloists, flutists, and low flute players. Flute Specialists has one of the largest inventories of new handmade flutes, pre-professional intermediate level instruments, head joints, piccolos, and low flutes. We also have a large inventory of previously owned flutes, piccolos, low flutes, and head joints as well. As a nationally known sales, repair, music, and accessory company, we have competitive pricing, excellent warranties for purchases and repairs. We also include for free, at no extra charge, instrument warranty for adjustments and lifetime discounts on all future repairs. We have a great teacher program assisting teachers, players, and families find the right instrument. We also have a number of virtual lectures and master classes for studios and private lesson instructors. Our Flute Specialist team looks forward to hearing from you and assisting you any way possible. We can send you flutes, piccolos, head joints for in-home trials as well. Do visit our flutespecialist.com website and our Flute Specialist Instagram and Facebook pages to keep up to date with all the fun, contests, and giveaways. We do look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Flute 360 podcast. Please subscribe to the Flute 360 newsletter by going to HeidiKBegay.com. A pop-up will appear and you can enter in your information for the weekly newsletter. The newsletter includes great incentives, updates, and perks to the subscribers. Go ahead to HeidiKBegay.com and sign up today. Thank you.
Let's talk about flute.